Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is James and welcome back to the Soundline. So today I'm going to be talking to you about Accuphase's CD players. Reason we're doing this video is because we actually have 3 of them in the store at the moment, and we thought it might be a good idea to sort of do a video comparing them, about differences between the sound quality and the odd feature difference here or there. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We've got the Accuphase DP450 CD player, DP570 CD SACD player, and the DP750 CD SACD player. All of them fantastic sounding. They go great with just about any component that we've tried them with because Accuphase is very neutral sounding. But the main point of today is really just to, as I say, outline some key differences, and I'm going to sit down and listen to a few different types of music on them and do my best to sort of explain the kind of sound differences you get between them. So before I get into listening to some music, I'm just going to talk about some of the kind of build and spec differences between them. You probably already gathered that the very first thing that I'm going to talk about is the difference between what discs they will play. So as I said earlier, the DP450 is just a CD player, so it'll just play good old standard CDs, whereas the DP570 and 750 will play CDs and SACDs. So in terms of decks, they have some different configurations in them. I'm not going to mention all the very specific model numbers and that sort of thing. So the DP450 and the DP570 have a very similar configuration of deck. They are both quadruple parallel decks where they have 4 decks running in parallel at the same time. The main difference being that the deck that is in the DP570 can process SACDs. So the main reason that this doesn't play SACDs is because it doesn't have the laser. This has the dual laser mechanism and then the similar deck configuration. The DP750 though takes it to a whole new level. As opposed to just having 4 decks, it actually has 16. It has 8 decks just for CD PCM and 8 decks just for DSD SACDs. So big step up there, and it's also a higher spec level deck as well. When comparing the power supplies between the 570 and the 750, they use relatively similar components. However, the 750 has twice as many. So it has dual transformers and dual filter cap sections. Basically, they've got a complete power supply for the digital section and a complete power supply for the analog section. So I think now is probably a good time for us to move on from talking about the spec differences and for me to listen to a few different genres of music on them. Have a listen to the music on 3 different machines, see what kind of differences I notice, and I'll come back to you guys with my results. Okay, I'm probably going to have to give you guys comments on each of the individual sort of genres or discs that I listen to one at a time, because otherwise I'm not going to remember everything. But I just listened to a piece from Beethoven's 7th, and the differences that I noticed between the 450 and the 570 were mainly that the 570 had a lot lower noise floor, so it was quite a lot darker sounding, and also the bass notes were particularly richer sounding on the 570, especially at low levels, like down when the orchestra is very quiet, you can still hear the really deep rumble of the double basses and the timpanis and that sort of thing. That really got fleshed out on the 570. And then when I listen to it again on the 750 just takes it to a whole new level. Everything's so much more organic on the 750. It sounds like real instruments again. And also the layering of each individual element and sound staging is a lot better, so you can really pick where every single artist and performer is sitting in the orchestra. So yeah, really big differences. That's the classical one. Done. I'm going to move on to something a bit different now. So I just listened to Bob Dylan, Oh Mercy, and it's a pretty cool one to listen to. It's got a lot of good bass guitar and harmonica in it. I would say the main differences between the 450 and the 570, it's pretty similar to what it was the first time round. There was a lot more detail with the 570 that it picked up, and just better positioning of elements and sound stages. A little bit hard to put my finger on that one. I definitely enjoyed it more. So I guess if if it's down to I liked the sound of it better, but I can't put my finger quite on what it was, then I guess we put that down to good old-fashioned musicality. Not really definable, but all we know is it sounds better. The 750 was really obvious going up to that. Just again, so much more organic. The bass guitar and the harmonica sounded like real actual instruments in the room, and again, the layering so much better. Bob's voice was just out front and center, and the music was surrounding him rather than being all lumped into one two-dimensional image. So yeah, big improvement. Okay, so I just listened to a little bit of jazz, a little bit of Oscar Peterson trio. Straight away, when I went from the 450 to the 570, there was an immediate difference in soundstage. Soundstage on the 570 was just so much wider, and so it showed a lot more elements. Again, it had, just a bit more texture and detail to everything that was going on there, and more three-dimensionality. So you could actually pick up the depth of how far away everything was. But when I went to the 750, again, same thing as the last two CDs, instruments were more organic. They sounded, more like real life because each element was leveled more correctly. Like it sounded more like the sort of volume you would expect from an instrument in the real world. But the biggest difference I noticed was the focus and the scale of the individual elements was so much better. The piano sounded like the size of a piano, and the bass sounded like the size of a bass. It wasn't just everything is the same size, but they're placed well. Now you've got them placed well, you've got them placed front to back, and you've got the scale of each element. So that was quite a powerful one. I actually really enjoyed that. I haven't listened to that CD before. I might have to buy it. Oh, and one thing I picked up on, going from the 450 to the 570 that I didn't hear in the 450. As soon as I went to the 570, I could hear the bass player's fingers sliding along the strings. That was an immediate difference that I heard as soon as he started moving his hands up and down the fretboard. Well, it's not a fretboard, up and down the arm. Yeah, you could hear that sort of sound, and yeah, huge difference. Moving on, I think probably now we'll go to something a bit more poppy. Let's use Dark Side of the Moon. So, Dark Side of the Moon, going from the 450 to the 570, the biggest difference I noticed was three-dimensionality. Elements were just spaced, further forward, further back. Roger Waters was right down the middle. You had the guitars up front and the drums off to the side. It was just way better positioned in the room, on that axis at least. The soundstage left to right between the two, I would think, was actually relatively similar. There's a lot of left to right soundstaging in this album as it is. So that was about the same. It was mostly the three-dimensionality. But when I went up to the 750, it was it was a lot more focused. So again, the scale of each element was way better, but also the layering was miles better. All the voices and everything didn't get lost in all of the background synth and everything else that goes on. And the background singers, you could hear them so clearly behind everything else, so they didn't get lost back there. And yes, I'd say easy win, obviously, but the layering and the focus and scale of the little elements was just so much better. Okay guys, I've listened to a variety of music on all three of them, and they are all starting to say kind of the same differences as I listen to different genres of music. So I think the main thing to focus on, if you're listening to the difference between the 450 and the 570, you get a lot more soundstage in terms of width and height, also more three-dimensionality, so all of the different placement of the elements and the instruments that you listen to is a lot better on this one. It has also got a bit more texture and detail to it, so I like that about it. It does play the SACD layer of some of the stuff that I was listening to as well, so that's an added bonus. You are going to be getting potentially a little bit more resolution or a little bit more detail through the fact that you can listen to SACDs on it. Going up to the 750, yeah, it's just, there's no competition whatsoever. The organicness of natural instruments is so much better. The layering of the individual elements is so much better. You can hear everything without it getting lost in the background. And just, yeah, overall, I think the musicality of all of them is fantastic. There's no real losers in this brand. But yeah, you can hear the differences between all three of them. But I think probably the best thing to do would be, if you guys have the opportunity to, listen to one of these players, see what you think. Yeah, they're all absolutely fantastic, all at different price points and have different capabilities. So yeah guys, that has been our little comparison video talking about the differences in sound and performance between the three Accuphase CD player models. Thank you for watching this video, hope you enjoyed it. Ka kite anō.